will be Lazarus and Judas, Jesus, Mary, and Martha. Now we start with Lazarus, who is silent throughout all of the episodes, but has a key role to the plot. Narrated by John, who says, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, of the village of Mary and Martha." Jesus is told that his friend Lazarus is ill, and he is told that he should go and to see Lazarus, but Jesus thinks that he has a few days, so he hangs back before he goes to make the visit of this friend with whom he loved dearly. Finally, when Jesus goes, it's too late. Lazarus is as dead as a doornail. First, Jesus tells them that Lazarus is only asleep, and then finally he says, Lazarus is dead. And quickly, there's this sadness that comes on the scene. We wonder, why did Jesus wait so long, knowing that his friend was so sick? Jesus makes it to their home, and not surprisingly, he finds Mary and Martha, who are crying. And they begin to blame Jesus. And soon Jesus finds himself crying, sharing in those tears at the loss of a friend. Now Lazarus has been in the tomb now for 4 days, and his body is beginning to decompose. But he wants to see him. And they plead with Jesus. They say, you can't, the stench would be unreal. But he persists. They remove the great stone in front of the tomb, and Jesus cries, Lazarus, come out. And as the scene of the first episode comes to an end, there is great celebration, and Jesus is seen as this great healing hero. Today is the second part of our series. He's returned back to this home with Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And Judas is the one who's in charge of keeping up with all of the money for the group. Their home in Bethany, which name means the house of the poor. It's a community that's on the outskirts of Jerusalem. It would be like Petersburg or Ashland for us here in Richmond. And it's a popular place of overflow for accommodations of those pilgrimages that are working their way to Jerusalem for the Passover. It's important for us to know that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. And when he enters into Jerusalem, this will be the episode that we experience together next week. But we have to remember that already Jerusalem is an incredibly dangerous place for Jesus because of what happened in that first episode when he raised Lazarus from the dead. The authorities are already plotting fiercely to get rid of Jesus because of his participation in that story. He is becoming too powerful, and his character needs to be taken out. Now, I think that they would add humor to the beginning of today's episode as Jesus walks into their home again and with a wink at Lazarus says, this place smells like someone has died. And then Mary and I think Lazarus would enjoy a nice laugh with Jesus. Martha would smile but then get back to preparing the meal. But Judas would just shake his head. Finding a moment of humor in this relationship between this family and Jesus can remind us of the significant power of what has taken place with Lazarus being raised from the dead. It's in their elation of this new life of their father that gives Mary pause. Her smile quickly fades. because she begins to understand that Jesus will be removed because of what he did for her father. And just like Jesus' mother Mary, the Mary in this story moves quickly to show her thanksgiving. She moves quickly to give an expression of what it means for this man named Jesus to put his own life at risk in order to save others. And a simple thank you will not do. She rushes off to her room and gets that bottle of expensive perfume. And when she takes the top off of the bottle, the smell of death was replaced with a smell of abundant extravagance. That perfume becomes a sacrament. And as our prayer book defines a sacrament being an spiritual grace, it shows God's abundance of love through her actions. And then Mary begins to pour the bottle upon Jesus' feet. And the camera takes a panoramic view of the whole scene. Everyone has stopped. Their mouths are wide open, and then tears begin to flow from Mary's eyes and Jesus as they look at one another during this grace-filled gift exchange. That amazing perfume has allowed us to see the silence in that space. Lazarus is radiant at his daughter's actions, but then over in the corner of the darkness falls as we look at Judas, who begins to comment about the monetary value that was wasted. Judas takes this holy moment where heaven and earth have come together and one can sense that God is there with them, and he instead focuses frugally on the questioning of the actions. Judas is uncomfortable in the holy, and he's trying to redirect everyone else's attention away from it too. But we look at the strength in Mary and how she pours her whole being into her praise and thanksgiving of what God has done through Jesus. She lets her hair down to dry his feet in order to give a very clear statement that she knows Jesus is going into the hands of the highest authority in that time and in that region, who will either recognize Jesus as the Messiah or they will kill him because he claims to be God. Mary uses the perfume, her tears, her hair, to powerfully pronounce who Jesus is, how much she believes in him, how much she loves him. And Jesus turns to Judas and says, "Zip it." And then looking at the camera says, "You will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me." Next week in our Passion reading on Palm Sunday will be our third episode when he goes into Jerusalem. He will be going into Jerusalem looking for those who have a faith like Mary in that place, while being very aware of those who have the mindset of Judas, justifying why all of this grace and love and care for each other is not as important as wealth and power. We think of these two characters, especially in Mary and Judas, and it's not so that we decide whether we like them or not. We think about them and decide which character we honestly betray in our own life daily. and which character Jesus is inviting us to become. Amen.